So this is all really amazing. And it's great to know that, yes, if we can identify the issue, which we talked about with the assessment, and then we can also look at ways to rewire our nervous system since it's at the root, at the heart of all of our disruptions in our relationships. And then we can move into, self-acceptance, acceptance of others. We talked a little bit about acceptance of others. Let's really dive now into acceptance of ourselves, because guess what, folks? I think that's even harder than accepting others. What do you think, Carol?
I think a lot of us learned early on that to admit that we're wrong is a really bad idea. It's like the greatest threat of all in some families to be wrong, to be in error, to be out of alignment with expectation. And when we're very small, starting as young as 6 months through our toddler phase, we're learning constantly, this is how to behave to keep these people loving me and taking care of me. This is how not to behave. This is what will get me thrown out of this family and I'll be alone in the cold. It's a primal sort of instinct to respond to the feedback from our caregivers with shaping ourselves in the direction that we perceive will keep them loving us. And so, yeah, that awareness is hard to access because it's deeply buried in our consciousness. And it's scary to admit, oh, I learned how to be this way so that they would love me. That's a hard thing to admit out loud.
So if we were not unconditionally loved, how do we unconditionally love ourselves?
I think it begins with recognizing that we learned to be someone to achieve a goal. However we frame that goal. So we can frame it as, I was afraid my parents wouldn't love me if I didn't behave this way, or I got more attention. I got laughs. I got taken care of differently when I played the role that was acceptable. And I was afraid to do the things that looked like they got disapproval. Even if all the parent does is frown, or all the child caregiver does is shake her head. It's a very subtle message sometimes that what you just did is not okay. And the child, having no real cognitive understanding of human relationships at 2, can only say, oh, that's not okay. I'm not doing that again. And so finding a way to say to ourselves, look, I learned this stuff. It's perfectly normal that I learned it. Everybody learned their role, their mask, their way to be long. The way to belong is the way I be. And so I can redo that. I don't have to keep being the person that I thought was the person who belonged when it's clear to me from my adult relationships that this person doesn't belong very well anymore. And so that's the other part is accepting, I don't do everything right now. I'm not, the be all end all of interpersonal goodness. There are things I could do better with other people.
So it sounds like it's like a process of starting with that recognition that, okay, I was loved and paid attention to for achieving goals, for doing certain things. But as an adult, I still want to belong, but I can just be to belong. Yes. Is that what you're saying? I mean, I think it's easier to say than to do.
It is. And I think that the self-awareness of knowing, the self-awareness of finding out the heart of who I am was created and wired into my brain by the time I was 3 years old. And I had no participation in that. I was passive. I was simply taking in the information and doing the best I could with it. And no matter how good or bad or indifferent my parents were, I'm not sure I believe there's such a thing as unconditional love. I think we all have conditions for each other. And the important thing is to recognize, these conditions don't work for me, but we can't do that when we're 3 or 2
but
or 6 months.
As adults, right?
What we can as adults. Right. These conditions for acceptance don't work for me now. And I can make a different decision. I can make a different choice.
That is very profound. Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
And I think that it leads well into this. I really want to have a conversation about relationships because they're so key today. And as we hopefully emerge from this pandemic and we can start to, in many ways, rebuild relationships that we have lost or that have worn thin. I mean, I know myself, I really miss a lot of people. And I know that you have these 7 essential strategies for success in relationships. And so I wanted to go through there and